Hey everyone, how are you doing today? So what if I told you that originally, the Kaminoans created their own batch of clones, a small handful of them, to fight the Empire? Well, in the original Battlefront 2 game, if you have played it or you haven't played it, this will be interesting for you either way. They actually ended up doing this. Now, an anonymous 501st Trooper once said this from the game. Officially, there was never a clone rebellion on Kamino. Unofficially, approximately 20 years after we were created, a special attachment of the 501st Legion was dispatched to Kamino, with orders to eradicate an army of clones that had been bred to take arms against the Empire. So, the end of the Clone Wars resulted not only in the end of the Jedi Order, but also the rise of the Galactic Empire, in the place of the fallen Republic. As they continued to secure the vital cloning facilities that were responsible for providing the Empire with the clones, the Empire controlled Kamino with their military force. Ironic, Kamino created their army, and now that same army controlled them. Although Kamino would continue to grow more stormtroopers for the Empire, and yes, I said stormtroopers, which I'll explain at the end of this video, a small group of Kaminoans grew resentful of the Empire's treatment to Kamino as a virtual military police state. In response to the Imperial presence of their world, the Kaminoans launched a covert rebellion against the Empire by discreetly breeding a new army of clones, all based on the genetic template of Jango Fett. Unlike the first clone army that had been bred for the Republic, the newest generation of clones were engineered with absolute loyalty to Kamino. Over the next decade after the conclusion of the Clone Wars, the anti-Imperial clone troopers were grown and trained to eventually liberate Kamino from Imperial rule. Donned in Phase 1 armor and composed entirely of jet troopers, the anti-Imperial clones were augmented with a series of ARC troopers, as well as a few LAAT gunships. Approximately 20 years after creating the first generation of clones based on the Fett template, the anti-troopers were fully grown, armed and evidently prepared to fight against their Imperial brothers. Around the same time, the Empire discovered Kamino's rebel operation and responded by sending an elite detachment of the 501st Legion to Kamino in order to destroy the Kaminoan rebellion and restore Imperial rule to its cloning centers. The 501st's main target was Kamino's capital, the Tipoca City cloning facility, by then occupied by the Kaminoan rebels and their anti-troopers. Boba Fett was hired to serve as the 501st's mission commander during the retaking of Kamino, due to his extensive knowledge of the inner layout and workings of Tipoca City. To prevent any chances of encouraging other insurrections throughout the galaxy, the mission to Kamino was completely off the record. The entire battle was virtually lost to the anti-troopers from the start. Despite their advanced training, the younger anti-Empire clones were outmatched by their older and more experienced Imperial brothers, who didn't care that they were killing their own kind. Good soldiers follow orders. Aside from possessing many veteran troopers from the Clone Wars and superior firepower, the 501st Legion was greatly assisted by Boba Fett. Unwilling to risk losing what remained of Jango Fett's blood, the main source for producing the Fett clones, one of the 501st's primary objectives was to capture a container that held a sample of Fett's DNA. After marching on Tipoca City and retrieving the container, the 501st brought Fett's blood sample to a landing platform, where an Imperial shuttle awaited them. From there, the shuttle took Fett's DNA off-planet to safety, while the 501st fought on against their brothers. After gaining further ground from outside the city, the 501st went on to fulfill its next primary objective, destroying the Kaminoan life support systems in order to kill all of the rebel clones that had not yet been decanted, thus preventing the Kaminoans from raising more anti-troopers against the Empire in the future. Despite being protected by numerous elite ARC troopers, the rebel clones failed to prevent the 501st from killing the undeveloped clones within the facility. An anti-Imperial clone trooper in combat against an Imperial stormtrooper of the 501st. After securing most of Tipoca City from the inside, Boba Fett and the 501st Legion proceeded to crowd the remaining anti-troopers and ARC troopers onto the platforms, where they were brutally wiped out. As the fighting dragged on, the Kaminoan rebel leaders saw the hopelessness of their situation and attempted to retreat by utilizing their LAAT gunships. Their efforts, however, were unsuccessful, as the 501st managed to destroy both gunships along with the Kaminoan traders as well. When the battle came to an end, none of the rebel clones were left alive. With his assignment completed, Boba Fett left the 501st Legion to clean up the mess on Kamino themselves, while he returned to deal with his bounty hunter dealings. Although the troopers of the 501st Legion proved their loyalty to the Galactic Empire once again, The circumstances surrounding the battle convinced Emperor Palpatine that a clone army composed entirely of clones based on one genetic source was too easy for corruption. From that point on, it was decided that the new clone stormtroopers would be created from various templates. The Empire even resorted to enlisting regular humans into the stormtrooper corps. Though the 501st remained composed purely of Jango's DNA, at least for the time being, the rest of the Imperial Army became increasingly diverse, with more and more enlisted troopers and alternative source clones. Thus, the clone revolt on Kamino was indirectly responsible for turning the clones of Jango Fett into a minority within the army that they once filled as a whole, an irony that the Fett's clones neither appreciated nor ever grew accustomed to. About a decade after the incident on Kamino, Commander Cody was bitterly resentful of the Imperial Army's pitiful decline in operational effectiveness. In addition to that, Cody absolutely hated enlisted stormtroopers with a passion, dismissing them as incompetent idiots that were utterly expendable. Which is also ironic since we know that the clones said that they were expendable. We can see this during the Clone Wars where Plo Koon tells them that they're not, to him. I hope you enjoyed this bit of a side story from Legends. A lot of this information was found on the internet. I didn't even know all of this in extensive detail, but of course you can find this out yourself if you play the original Battlefront 2 game. However, more sources were added to this from certain books and comics. I even got to learn some more about this information online, which is always fun. As always, I don't know everything, but when I do find cool stuff, I love to share it with you all. So what do you all think about these clones that tried to fight against the Empire? I think it's a really cool concept. I think if they had more of this, or maybe they had more clones, then they could have at least given them a bit of a run for their money in conjunction with the rebellion. That would have been really cool to see. Clones fighting against stormtroopers. Perhaps this would have helped avoid much more conflict in Return of the Jedi. But, of course, at the very end, we did win. The rebels won. Luke Skywalker was victorious in defeating the Emperor through Anakin Skywalker, and everything came to peace. At least until the sequel trilogy. Hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you did, and I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, remember, the Force will be with you, always.